I would like to figure out how money moves systems. Like, how does money influence institutions that have these lofty, important goals? And just how does that work? So I like to figure out things using thought experiments. And in this particular video, I would like to do a thought experiment with an evil trillionaire who has an agenda and a lot of money to accomplish that agenda. And I would like to have a system where everybody else inside that system is purely altruistic. Like, they have really good things they care about. They would never engage in evil behavior. So I want to set up that scenario to see, can our evil trillionaire accomplish his goals? And to be clear, this is not about trillionaires being evil at all. As a matter of fact, I think this same thought experiment would actually work if you have just a system with regular people who have, good values and quirks that make them, not perfect. I mean, a regular system with a trillionaire who wants to do good things in the world, I actually think this same thought experiment could work for that trillionaire who has a vision and wants to change the world for good. How would that purely good trillionaire enact their will with their money? So this thought experiment works in both cases, but it's way more entertaining when we have an evil trillionaire. So that's what I'm going to do. And this evil trillionaire, so let me set up a situation. This evil trillionaire owns a business that's a chlorine business, and they have some product that it's a good product. And I have to give this trillionaire like something good they're doing in the world, or else I personally will not believe they're evil. So this trillionaire's product that they produce at their company saves, say, 10 lives per year. And maybe it's quality adjusted life years, so it's just like it makes 10 people's lives significantly better in some way. However, their company also pollutes really badly into the lakes and the rivers around where the company is located. And that pollution actually negatively impacts many, many people's children's health, say. So let's just imagine that the chlorine plant that pollutes all of these ecosystems also harms 1,000 children per year with the chemicals that sort of get mixed in their playground stuff. This is just a scenario, that's what I'm setting them up. And what makes this trillionaire evil is that the trillionaire focuses so much on those 10 people that are saved through the company that makes them a lot of money. And the trillionaire wants to minimize anybody who's advocating to do something about that environmental impact. So to be really clear about the trillionaire's goals, this trillionaire would like to make sure that any environmentalist who's upset about the chlorine and any health advocate upset about the children gets squelched, that nobody believes them, that they're not able to gain any political power. The trillionaire's goal is to keep those people down and to tout his own business, to tout the value in the business so that he gets more power because everybody sees those 10 people who are helped by his product. That's the goal. Can he accomplish this using money? The first question we have to ask is, would it be possible in this system of purely altruistic people to dangle some money in front of some of them to suppress the efforts of the activists and of the people who are trying to point out the harmful effect of the pollution? Would that work if people are altruistic? And to answer that question, we actually have to go a little bit deeper into money as a secondary motivator. People don't like money for the sake of having money, generally. They like money because money does something for them. And sometimes they just like it because they attach money to status. Maybe sometimes they like money because that's sort of the game they're playing, is maximizing money, and it's a fun game that they enjoy playing. But for most people, it's really about, what could I do with that money? So some of our altruistic people are involved in these really, really good causes for the world, and they know that if they gain more money, they can empower the causes, the altruistic causes that they're passionate about. So for those people, if you dangle money in front of them and say, all you have to do is make sure people in this one little town are not talking about the environmental impact of the chlorine plant. That's all you have to do. And you'll get a ton of money for your cruelty to animal cause. Would you do it? And my guess is for some of these altruistic people, they're going to weigh the costs and benefits. Well, it's just one town that's getting the pollution. Yeah, it's a little bit of harm. But for me doing that, think of all of the wonderful things that my personal cause, the animal rights cause, would get if I did that. So for some of these altruistic people, they might be willing to, keep down and suppress the environmentalists if they know that their cause will be helped by it. So that's our first possibility that maybe dangling money in front of altruistic people could accomplish things if they're weighing this cost and benefit of their cause versus the one small town that's being polluted. That's our first test. So for some of the people, the answer might be yes. However, these people also have a moral conscience, so they're not going to feel very good about suppressing the environmentalist cause and the health cause. So not everybody's going to do this, and it might not necessarily be enough to just pay a few people who are willing to do the bidding for the money. So for just a minute, let's imagine a situation where this trillionaire has tried really hard to find the people willing to work for the money who have done that cost-benefit analysis, and they'll go out there and they'll maybe, tarnish the reputations of these environmentalists and whatnot. There's a few people doing that, but let's say it's not quite enough because some people are sort of pointing to the situation and being like, hey, you're paying those people to say that. There's a conflict of interest that's really obvious. We're not going to pay attention to that. So I don't think this in and of itself is enough to actually move a system of purely altruistic people in an evil direction. Not enough. However, there are other approaches besides just directly dangling money in front of people's faces to do your bidding. Because most people who engage in that kind of transaction kind of know it's not the best. And really what the billionaire wants is the billionaire wants people who see things from his perspective. He wants people who are like, wow, we really need to suppress those environmentalists because of these 10 people that the company is helping with their chlorine product. We need true believers if we're actually going to accomplish real things in the world. So at this point, we have to ask the question, what can the billionaire actually do? And when I look around at really rich people, one thing I notice is that they tend to fund artists and academics to, do their own creative academic research. They tend to fund these amazing opportunities for altruistic people to have agency and creative control and space to explore the things that they care about that are good things. A lot of those coveted positions for artists and academics and scientists, those are funded by these billionaires. So I have to ask the question, what's going on there? Because when you ask these people, is the person who's funding you, are they telling you what to study or what to look at or what kind of art to create? Or is that position really a free position for you to do what you want? Most of them will say, actually, no, I'm really free in this position to do what I want. So the question is, can our trillionaire use those positions to advance his cause? And I think the answer is yes for a couple of reasons. First of all, people in these amazing artistic and academic positions that are funded by trillionaires, these people know that they can't really criticize the trillionaire. And for most of these people, actually, that's not really a problem because that's not even what they're interested in. They never think about chlorine or talk about chlorine, so it's not really a problem to just not criticize the chlorine company. They just want to do their art and their academic research. That's it. Now, we might think of two different types of people who would embody these positions. where one type of person is a person who naturally is actually kind of pro-chlorine for some reason that is maybe altruistic, like maybe they're interested in other applications of chlorine products and they're hopeful about use of chlorine in the future to save even more lives than the 10 lives currently saved. So that kind of person, their natural desires and interests for truly altruistic things actually do align with this trillionaire's. So the trillionaire, if they can go out there and find really brilliant and creative people who are kind of on their side, maybe not for that company's specific chlorine products, but there's a synergy between the hope of future chlorine products and this company, such that if you can lift them up into a prestigious position that will have influence on other people in the field, that will be able to network with other scientists in the field or other artists in the field, such that those ideas kind of spread by someone who's genuine, who's altruistic, and who can kind of soften people in their social circles up to the notion that actually we need to avoid criticizing the negative effects of the chlorine plants in order to make way for these amazing scientific breakthroughs in the future. I do think that's one obvious thing that's going on, is that the trillionaires can influence who gets lifted into these positions. Now, I will say, oftentimes within institutions who are trying to protect their own integrity, the institutions will sort of have a wall between the money and the hiring choice. So the trillionaire may not be able to actually choose exactly who gets to embody that wonderful new academic position that they're funding. But they might be able to have a few stipulations that could sort of nudge things in that direction. And if they recognize, wait a second, if I fund 100 positions with these stipulations, the stipulations are just enough so that probably one of those 100 people is a pro-chlorine advocate. And maybe that's all it takes. Like, this is a trillionaire. Maybe they can afford funding 100 positions to get one person who's really and truly on their side. But the other thing here actually is, I think if you take people who are not true chlorine advocates and really just want to do their artwork and want to do their academics, can you get those people to take up pro-chlorine positions in their workplace? And I do think there's some ways of nudging them in that direction. And one is, if you give someone this amazing position where they have creative license and sort of power within their organization, influence and status, they will do what it takes and they'll build up the intellectual armor that will keep them in that position. So if, let's say you fund this position for, say, 5 years, and something comes along where someone is criticizing their position because it's funded by chlorine polluters or whatever, the person in that position is going to get defensive. They're going to be like, no, we don't do anything for them. Now, of course, in that defensiveness, they can't critique the chlorine advocate because they kind of know that's important for their position. So they might actually start to take up some of the arguments that the chlorine pollution isn't that bad, just to really justify the position that's so important to them, that is really doing good things in the world. Especially if what they're doing with the art and the academics is not really related to chlorine and pollution at all. It's in some other realm. And maybe they haven't thought much about the negative effects of chlorine. Once someone starts to attack them for their position, their defensiveness will cause them to build up in their head pro-chlorine arguments that they may start to buy into. And that's especially the case if there are good pro-chlorine arguments out there. Like, they may overweigh the good pro-chlorine arguments and underweigh the pollution and health effects of chlorine pollution just because they want to feel good about their job. And honestly, having leverage over these dream positions for this altruistic population, I think that's actually one of the main tools that money uses to accomplish its goals. It's not directly dangling money in front of someone's face to do evil bidding. Rather, it's creating these amazing opportunities for good altruistic people to embody, and creating these subtle, nudgy types of incentives for people in those positions to be a little bit dismissive of the anti-chlorine consumer advocates, the environmentalists who are anti-chlorine in that town. And I think that dynamic is subtle and it's very, very long term. Like, it takes a long time for people to subtly drift their positions. So if we come back to our original question, can an evil trillionaire come into a system with purely altruistic people and bend their perception of reality and bend their will toward the trillionaire's interests? I think the answer is yes. But that doesn't just happen through dangling money in front of people to get them to do your bidding. I think the bigger way of making that happen is by making people's dreams come true, making things they care about come about through your generous donations, your altruistic money, and slowly over time sort of bending people's openness to the pro-chlorine perspective. Now, I do want to come back to good billionaires, good trillionaires. Like, could these same techniques be used if a trillionaire, say, really wants to advance certain really great causes for the world? Could they use the same techniques of enabling people's dream positions to enact that will? I think the answer is yes. Do good trillionaires exist? I think the answer is yes. I think some of them are actually doing amazing things in the world. But the bending of the will of the population, the perception of reality of the population, I think that's a really powerful tool. And I think the real question is, are there checks and balances in the system to make sure the bending of the will in the system toward money doesn't veer off in a direction that nobody's watching and that's not so great?